Okay, so for this lesson, we're going to talk about systems of inequalities. And really quick, before we get too far into that, let's remember what a system is. You've seen systems of equations, which basically meant that you would have two equations, you would graph them potentially, and find where they intersect. For instance, in this particular example, we have a point of intersection right here at -2, 4, so we would have a solution of 2, 4. Okay, now that's with a system of equations. Keep in mind that this one had one solution, and you did have options here of no solution or infinite solutions as well, but this is what it looked like for systems of equations. Now we start looking at systems of inequalities. So as you learned in class about two variable inequalities and how that creates a borderline along with a shaded region of the graph, systems of inequalities are very similar to that. One thing to be aware of is a system of inequalities can only be solved graphically. Okay, so that's why you received this sheet here. So what I want to do is graph both of these inequalities separately. So we were given one of the inequalities as y is less than -x plus 4. Recall there are four pieces of information that we should know. We have that the m is -1, the b is 4. This is a less than symbol, so it's going to be a dashed line. And it's less than, which means that we shade below. Okay, I'm going to take a second and put that on the graph. If you want to, you can pause it and do that yourself and then make sure they match. Okay, so I have a y-intercept at 1, 2, 3, 4, and a slope of -1, so it should look like this. I'm going to be careful to make sure that I draw a dashed line. I have my arrows. I have my label as y is less than -x plus 4. And I needed to shade below, so I'm going to shade this entire thing below. Okay. But now I have a second inequality. My second inequality was y is less than or equal to x plus 1. So again, the four pieces of information. My slope is 1, my intercept is 1. This is a less than or equal to symbol, so it's going to be a solid line. And since it's less than, again, I'm going to shade below. Okay, before I put this one on the graph, do notice, and I think some people came up with this today, one inequality divides the graph into two sections, the section to this side of the line and the section to this side of the line. So what do you think is going to happen when we put the other inequality on here? Okay. Again, take a moment and pause the video. Go ahead and graph this thing. I have a y-intercept of 1 and a slope of 1. This one is a solid line, so I can just draw it like normal with my arrows and my label. And I needed to shade this one below. Well, shading this one below does this. Okay, so observe what this actually did. First, there are four sections to the graph now. I have 1, 2, 3, 4 different sections to the graph. And if you look really, really carefully, one section looks a little bit like plaid. It's where the shading overlaps each other. So what this is, right in this area right here, in this region, I'm going to put a big S. And that S stands for solution set. Okay, that means that any point that I pick in this area of the graph is going to work in both inequalities. Okay, if you keep in mind what these other parts mean, because again, this was divided into four sections now. This section right here that's only blue will only work in the bottom inequality, but it will not work in the top inequality. The part that's only red will work in the top inequality, but not the bottom. The part that's empty won't work in either, and then any point in this area works in both. I'm not going to do it right now, but you should pick a point in this area, like 0, 0. Does 0, 0 work in both inequalities? You should check that, okay? So I'm going to do one more example, and then let you practice the other ones yourself. So I'll work on question 2. So again, I want to graph the system of inequalities and find the solution set. This one does actually say name a point. All right. Again, solving systems of inequalities can only be done graphically. You cannot use algebra to do this right now. So I'm going to start with my first inequality. I had y is greater than or equal to 2x. What are the 4 pieces of information? Well, I know the slope is 2. I don't see the y-intercept, which makes it 0. This is a greater than or equal to, so it's a solid line. And since it's greater than, I'm going to shade above. Okay? So let's get that on the graph. Again, I want you to do this yourself and then bring it back to the video. I have a y-intercept of 0 and a slope of up to right 1. Up to right 1. Okay. So this was a solid line. Notice I just double check that before I do anything. So I have my arrows and my label is y is greater than or equal to 2x. I'm going to shade above. Above is over in this area. Okay. My other inequality was y is less than x plus 1. My slope is 1. My y-intercept is 1. That does not have the equal sign, so it's going to be a dashed line. And I'm going to shade below since it's less than. Okay, so let's get this on the graph. My y-intercept is 1. My slope is 1. So up 1 and right 1. Okay. This one is a dashed line. And that's y is less than x plus 1. All right, and I need to shade below. What I have seen some people do just as a strategy for this, because now it gets kind of confusing and these lines are close together, so it makes it even more difficult. If you want to, use your ruler as a guide. So I'm going to put my ruler there and I'm going to shade everything below. Notice that I'm shading the entire portion of the graph that's below this line. Okay, and that's an easy way to do that. So now we just have to figure out where is the overlap, where is the plaid part of this. And I notice that that is right in this tiny little area right here. So there is my solution. The question asked me to pick a coordinate in that solution set, so I just find any point I want to in this set. I'm going to choose a point that's not on either of these lines, and I'm going to ask you to do the same thing. So I'm going to pick a point like right here, right in the middle. That point is going to be -7 and -8. So a possible solution is the point -7, -8. Okay, and once again, I'm not going to do it, but you should probably substitute those numbers into the two inequalities and make sure they do work. Make sure you did your work correctly. Okay, there are 2 more on the back. I am going to ask you, I'm going to post this on Schoology, of course, and I'm going to ask you to answer a quick question, multiple choice based on this. All right, I'll see you in class tomorrow. As usual, please be ready to ask any questions. See you later.